It's time to add loops to our coding arsenal. Loops allow us to perform tasks multiple times until a condition is reached. Let's make this obby game more fun by scripting a few loops. Hello everyone, it's Luis from LogoLife bringing you a series dedicated to Roblox game development. In this video, we'll be learning about basic tables and different kinds of loops that we can use in our games. Let's get started. We got a basic template for our obstacle course game, our obby. It's pretty basic. A player would run up the ramp, then make a jump into the blue, green, and red platform before making the final jump to the end. We can make this a lot more interesting with the help of loops. So let's make a script in the server script service and get started. Loops allow us to execute code multiple times until its condition is met. Let's say we wanted to print hello world 3 times to the output. We could do that with a for loop as follows. Type in the word for, and then you create a control variable. I'm going to call mine counter. You set it equal to the number you want to start at, and then you say the number you're going to, and the increment for each time that you go through the loop. So let's say we want to print hello world. Every time that hello world gets printed, it's gonna increase the counter variable by 1 until it reaches 3. So we should see 3 hello worlds, and if we hit play, indeed we see 3 hello worlds. Another important use of for loops is iterating over tables. But what are tables? Well, tables allow us to store information in an organized way, and then we can do things with that information. Let's say I want to store some names, so I'll call my table names, and then I can set that equal to curly brackets, and then go ahead and start typing in the names. Each of the names is known as an element in the table. Each of the elements in our table has a particular index that refers to its position in the table. Let's print out each of the elements in that table. We do the table name, and then in square brackets, put the index of the elements. So if we put index 1, that refers to Louis, the first element in the table. And if we do index 2 and 3, and that would refer to Mario and Stan respectively. Let's go ahead and check this out. Indeed, it prints Louis, Mario, and Stan. Now we want to actually greet those names instead of saying hello world as we did at the top. Go ahead and tweak our for loop. We're going to say for and then index. We need an index variable. And then the name that we're going through at the time in the for loop. Then in pairs, the name of the table. 2. Now we didn't have to specify how many times we want to do the for loop as we did in the first example, because when you declare a for loop in this way, it'll do it as many times as it takes to get through the whole table. Okay, so the index will be the number of each of the elements as it's going through the table. Index, then the name is the actual name itself. So this could be Louis, Mario, and then Stan. When we do it the third time, the third iteration, names is the name of the table. Now we just do our print statement. So print hello, and then we're gonna concatenate the name. Go ahead and run it. There we go. Hello, Louis, Mario, and Stan. Now we can use these ideas to make the obby a lot more interesting. Let's do that. Now instead of names, we're dealing with those glowing platforms here. So let's go ahead and make some variables for each of those. Now that we have a variable that refers to each of the platforms, it'd be useful to put our platforms inside of a table. So let's make a platforms table. I also know that we're going to be performing some similar tasks on each of the platforms. We're going to make them disappear and then we'll make them reappear. So creating some functions to handle that will be very useful. Let's do it. Function disappear will take a part, and then it'll change that part's transparency equal to 1 to make it disappear, and it'll change the collision equal to false so the player can fall through. In a similar way, we can make our appear function, which just does the opposite, setting transparency equal to 0 and collision to true so the platforms are visible and the players are able to stand on the platforms. Let's go ahead now and iterate over our table and make our platforms do something a bit cooler. I'm going to do exactly the same. I'll create my index variable, and now instead of saying name, I'm going to just say platform, and in pairs, and our name for the platforms table is platforms. I really like doing the platforms, so this is plural. I like doing the table names in plural, and then I like putting in our for loop the singular version of the table name. That way I understand the difference between the two. This is just each element, this is the table name. And we'll go ahead and we'll make our platform disappear. We'll wait a second, and we'll make our platform here again. We'll wait another second. This might happen too fast, so I'm just gonna put a little bit of it, like a 3 seconds. Let us load in so we can actually observe. Let's check it out. Here we go. It's going through and it's making the parts actually disappear and then reappear. It does it once and then it stops. Now, what if we wanted to have this behavior happen indefinitely? For that, we would need a while loop. So while loops execute their code as long as their condition remains true. You can declare it as follows. You say while true to. Now here where I put true, this is where you would put a conditional statement. Okay, we've seen those before in the if statements. If you put it equal to true, then this would be known as a forever loop. You have to be real careful with while loops in general, because if you get stuck inside of a while loop, you could be executing code forever, and it could be executed so fast that it can make your game crash. It's a good idea to put a wait anytime you're dealing with forever loops. But we already have some waits in here. So if we drag our previous for loop inside of that while loop and hit play, we should be able to observe that now the behavior is just going to keep going over and over. It's really cool. It's what we wanted. Our game's already a lot better with some more interaction happening. I'm going to teach you a couple of ways that you can get out of a while loop. So the first one is to actually give it a condition. So we can create a variable, say counter, set it equal to 1. Then if we only wanted the platforms to go through the disappearing and reappearing sequence twice, then we'd say counter less than or equal to 2. And then update our counter variable, increment by 1 every time that we go through the sequence there. Now, if this kind of syntax of the plus equals, this means counter equals counter plus 1. We hit play. We should be able to see this is the first iteration, and now it's going to go through the second one. Then counter is going to go to 2, and then it stops. We're out of the while loop now. That's one way we could have done it. Second way is, say we keep this as true. So we technically have a forever loop. We make our if statement. If counter is greater than 2, then break. Pay attention because break is a very important word. It's used to break out, to get out of for loops and while loops. Now if we hit play, we'll see we go through the sequence twice, and then it'll stop. Let's go. One thing that's really important to know when you're dealing with loops is that if you don't have a way to get out of a loop, so let's say we take out this counter, we really get ourselves into an infinite loop. If we put code afterwards, it'll never actually get that far. The execution of the program will get stuck in the while loop. It'll never get the chance to see the hello world. So just a quick demonstration for that. We'll have a future video explaining how you can get around that, something known as threads. Let's go. But yeah, you see the output never showed the hello world. So now we got the game as we wanted with our sequence going indefinitely. Our players now have to be a little bit more careful when jumping between the platforms. We learn how to do for loops, we learn how to do while loops, and we got the basic understanding of tables. So let's go. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to be notified when we post new videos. Keep an eye out for upcoming workshops on our website and join the Discord to get involved in our community. We'll see you on the next one. Oh, yeah!